Chapter 6. Keep low. The wagon jerked and swayed as it bumped over the dry ground. Jack felt as though he were flying in the hot sunlight. Dust from the road filled his throat and eyes. A boom of cannon grew louder and louder. Jack heard a popping sound too, like the noise of firecrackers. "What's that popping noise?" he shouted, blinded by the dust and sunlight. "Musket flowers," said Clara. Jack remembered that muskets were a long, old-fashioned gun. "What are those flash?" asked Annie. Jack tried to open his eyes and see what she was talking about. He saw bright flash of light in the distance and puff of smoke in the sky. "Cannons filled shells exploding," said Clara Burton. "Shells are like small bombs. They have ruined much farmland." Jack squinted at the past countryside. The ground was filled with ugly holes. Long ditches were also cut through the field. "Did the shells make those ditches too?" he asked. "No, there are trenches and soldiers dug for the battles," Clara said. "Each side digs their own. Day after day they sit in the trench firing their muskets at one another." Jack tried to imagine how horrible it would be to sit in the trench all day, waiting to be shot or waiting to shoot someone else. "We have to get some water," said Clara. She drove the wagon to the narrow creek. A stream of water flowed down here, running over rock. The wagon came to the house. Jack heard a whistling sound, then another. "Keep low," cried Clara. "What's that?" Jack asked. "Cannon fire," she said. Jack and Danny crouched down in the driver's seat. Jack felt a rush of panic. He pulled out the list. His hands were shaking as he read, "Be brave." "Oh, great," he says. Another cannon shell whizzed overhead, then another. The ground exploded over and over in flash of light. Dirt clouds flew everywhere. Cloud of smoke and more dust filled the air. The horses neighed and whined. "Be brave," Jack thought. "Be brave." Chapter 7. Helping Hand. The firing came to an end. The horses calmed down. The smoky air began to clear. Clara handed Jack and Danny each the canteen. Fill these quickly," she says. "We have no time to waste." Jack's legs felt wobbly as he followed Annie to the creek. They followed their canteens, then climbed back into the wagons. "Keep alert," said Clara, looking for the wounded as they come up to the battlefield. She snapped the reins. The horses started off again. As they bumped along, Jack looked ahead for wounded soldiers. "There," said Annie. She pointed to the man leaping toward them and waved his arms. The man looked very young, more like a teenage boy. His uniform was torn and bloody. It wasn't a blue uniform, though. It was gray. Clara pulled the horses to a stop. "But he's a Confederate soldiers," said Jack. "When someone is hurt, you give them a helping hand, no matter who they are," said Clara. Her voice got softer. "I have seen courage and kindness on both sides of this war. Sometimes things are not as simple as they seem." Jack was glad they had stopped to help the soldiers. He jumped out of the wagons. "Do you need a helping hand?" he asked a young man. "Thank you," the soldier said softly. Jack helped him into the back of the wagon. The soldiers lay down on the pile of blankets and closed his eyes. Jack climbed back onto the seat beside Clara. She snapped the reins and they rode on. They came across more rugged men resting in the shadow of an oak tree. Those soldiers wore blue uniforms. Again, Clara stopped the horses. See if any of those men need a ride to the hospital, she said to Jack and Danny. Jack glanced at the soldiers sleeping in the back of the wagon. Can the Confederates and the Union soldiers be together? He asked worriedly. Clara nodded. Sometimes men are simply too sick and tired to be enemies anymore, she said. Sometimes they even know each other. Many families and friendships have been torn apart by this war. Let's go, said Annie, hopping out of the wagon. Jack followed her. They carried their cantons to the man under the oak tree. Hi, said Annie. Does anyone need to go to the hospital? Only John, their dumber boy, the soldier says. He's suffering from the heat stroke, but we all need some water, miss. Jack saw the young boy lying on the ground. His eyes were closed. Oh, Jack, whispered Annie. He looked just like you. The boy didn't look a lot like Jack, just a few years older. We better get him to Clara ambulance right away, Annie says. She handed her canteen to one of the tired soldiers. Another soldier lifted the dumber boy to his feet. The boy opened his eyes and mumbled a few words. He tried to walk, but he swayed as if he were about to faint. Wait, Jack grabbed the boy. We'll give you the helping hand, he says. The dumber boy put his arms around Jack and Danny's shoulders. Just a little farther, John, and he says, You're doing great. Just a little farther. The dumber boy moved as if he were walking to his sleep. His hands hung down. His feet shuffled in the dust. Take good care of him, and he said. One of the men called. We can't do without him. Chapter 8. Brothers. Clara Burton has turned the wagons around. She helped Jack and Danny lift the dumber boy into the back. The soldier said he had heat stroke, and he told Clara his name is John. The boy lay down next to the helping Confederate soldiers. He does have heat stroke, said Clara says. The other boy also has a high fever. We must get down to the hospital at once. Can you two stay in the back of the wagons and do as I tell you? Sure, said Jack and Danny. Clara dumped 2 clean cloaks with water from Jack's canteens. Gently pressed those clothes against their face to help cool them off, she says. She gave the clothes to Jack and Danny. Then she went to the front of the wagons and climbed in. The wagon started forward. Jack and Danny gently patted the soldier's face with the damp clothes. Jack looked at the young man lying side by side. The two seemed far more alike than different. In another time and place, they might have been friends, Jack thought. Finally, the wagon arrived at the field hospital. The Confederate soldier was put on the soldiers and stretchers and carried to the tent. 2 soldiers wearing bandage put the dumber boy on the stretchers. Could you stay with John a while? Clara Burton asked Jack and Danny. Sure, said Jack, trying to bring down his fevers. Clara says, a nurse will give you ice pack to press against his skins. Find me when his fever is lower. The dumber boy was carried into an empty tent. Jack and Danny followed. John was put on the coat. Then the nurse brought some rugs and a bucket filled with ice. Jack and Danny were left alone with the boys. Jack wrapped some ice on the rug. He pressed the ice pack against the boy's head and neck and arms, and he fanned the air to cool John's off and to keep away the fleas. Jack felt so hot he pressed an ice pack against his own face for a moment. Then he looked up Dumber Boys in his Silver Wars book. He read, "The Silver Boy was the last one to use Dumber Boys. The drum bit was used to give orders to soldiers. Different bits told them when to eat, how to march, and even how to fight. On the smoky battlefield, the boys' drumming helped soldiers find one another's and keep together." "Wow," said Jack. He closed the book, pulled out his notebook and wrote, "Dumber Boy, really important job." Suddenly John shouted. Jack looked up from his notebook. The drummer boy was still asleep, but he was waving his arms as if he were having a nightmare. Annie shook the boy's arms. "Wake up, John," she says. "You're okay. Wake up." The drummer boy opened his eyes. "You were having a bad dream," said Annie. "You're safe now. You'll see your family again soon." No, the boy says. He sounded fasting. "I have to go back to the battlefield." "No, you don't have to fight anymore," said Annie. "You can go home to be safe." "No," the boy says. "They need me. They need my drum." He sounded more and more upset. Jack thought about their list. "Put aside your own feeling," he remembered. "Okay, John," said Jack. "You can go back as soon as you feel better." "Jack," said Annie, He'll get hurt or killed. I'm afraid for him." "Me too," Jack said softly, "but we have to put our own feelings aside. They're one of the things on our list." Annie sighed. "Okay," she said sadly. She looked at John. "If you want to fight again in the Civil War, you can, if that's what you really want." "Thank you," the boy whispered. "You know, you're the bravest kid I ever met," Jack says. The drummer boy smiled at Jack. "You look just like my little brothers," he said hoarsely. "You look just like my big brother," said Jack, "except I don't have a big brothers. I don't have any brothers." The three of them laughed. The drummer boy's laugh was very soft. The boy laid his head back on his pillows and closed his eyes again. In the moment he was sleeping peacefully. A smile was on his lip. Annie felt his forehead. "His fever's gone down," she said. "We should go tell Clara." Annie left the tent. Jack got up and slowly followed her. When he reached the entrance of the tent, he turned and looked back. The shadows of twilight fell across the boy's calm, sleeping face. It was strange. Jack hardly knew the drummer boy, but he felt they could be brothers. Listening to the cannon fires in the distance, Jack was afraid for the boys. Will he live to see his family again? Jack wondered. "Good luck, John," Jack said softly. With a heavy heart, Jack stepped out into the warm evening air. Chapter 9. Don't Give Up. "Annie," said Jack. "Over here," she says. Jack saw two fingers standing in the twilight. He walked over to Annie and Clara. They all stared in the direction of the distant battlefield. Bright lights flashed against the dark blue horizons, cannon shells exploding. Every time you see the flash, you know those shells may have taken the life or many lives, said Clara. That's awful, said Annie. Yes, it is, said Clara, and a whole world can vanish in that flash. All the young man's joys and sorrow, all his memories. That is the cruel war, said Annie. All wars are cruel, said Clara Burton. People feel they must fight their causes they believe in, but they soon discover that war is not about glory and fame. It's about mystery and trouble, terrible pains and sadness. It made me miss my mom and dad, said Annie. It made me really miss them. Annie sounded tired and homesick. Finally, she had lost her cheerfulness. I think it's the time for you to go home, said Clara. Jack thought of all the wounded men who needed food and waters and kindness and comfort. No, Jack says, we have to stay. We can't give up. That's on the list. Don't give up. Jack pulled out their list to show Clara Burton. Oh yes, she said, nodding. I see one of my nurses had written down the thing that I often say. Let me and that it one things more. Do not forget the one who loved you. Jack have a big sigh. He was homesick too. Can we keep the list? He asked. Of course, said Clara. You don't have to work in the hospital to follow my word. They work in all of my life, no matter where you go. Thanks, said Jack. My thanks to both of you, said Clara Burton. You were great helpers. You are the great teachers, said Annie. Goodbye, said Clara Burton. Be very careful going home. We will, said Jack and Annie. Bye. The sun was setting as they walked out of the camp. The boom of cannon sounded in the distance. Soldiers sang and sung around the campfire. We're tenting tonight on the old campground. Give us a song and cheers, our very heart, a song of home and friends we love so dear. Jack and Danny walked through the darkening field. By the time they reached the woods, the star was out. They climbed out up the rope ladder to treehouse. Annie grabbed the Pennsylvania book. Wait, said Jack. He looked out the window. He couldn't see anything below, but a soldier's song was still carried through the warm, starry night. Many are the hearts that are weary tonight, wishing for the worst to choose. As Jack listened, he thought of Clara Burton, the early slaves, the young confident soldiers, the John, a dumber boy. War is not a game, Jack said softly. It is definitely not a game. Many are the heart looking for the right to see the dawn of peace. The song ended. The cannon fire stopped. The night was quiet except for the croaking of frog. Ready? Annie whispered. Ready, said Jack. I really wish we could go home, Annie says, pointing to the picture of the Frog Creek woods. The wind started to blow. The treehouse started to spin. It swung faster and faster. Then everything was still. Absolutely still. Chapter 10. Home, Sweet Home. There was a booming in the distance. Jack opened his eyes and caught his breath. Is that campfires? He wondered. Are we still back in the Civil War? We're home, said Annie. Home, sweet home. Oh man, Jack whispered. They were home. They were back in the Frog Creek woods. They were wearing their own comfortable clothes again. The campfire was really only thunder. At that moment, Jack loved the thunder. Raindrop patted against the treehouse. We better get We better hurry, said Jack. Wait, leave the list in the treehouse, said Annie, and it's the first special writing for Morgan's library, something to follow. Jack took the list of Clara Burton rules out of his pack. He put down on the floor next to the Morgan's letters. I wonder how that list will help save Camelot, he said. I don't know, said Annie, but you know what's weird about getting that list? I think we couldn't just have taken it home when we first get it. We have to leave it first. Jack nodded. Annie was completely right, he thought. He picked up his backpack. Wait, I see another note, said Annie. She picked up the piece of paper off the treehouse floors. On it was written, "Come back on Wednesday." I guess that when Morgans want us to look for the next special writing, said Annie. That's in 3 days, said Jack. Let's go home and rest. She started down the rope ladder. Annie followed. When they stepped into the ground, the rain began to pour down. Run, said Jack. They ran through the Frog Creek woods, then down the trees. They ran to their perch and dashed into the dry, cozy house. They found their parents reading in the living room. Dad, Mom, Annie cried, we're so glad to see you. Well, we're glad to see you too, said their dad, sounding a little puzzled. Go put on dry clothes, said their mom. Jack and Danny started up to their rooms. Halfway up the stairs, Jack stopped. Oh, I have the question, Jack, he called to his parents. Does anyone in our family fight in the Civil War? Their dad looked surprised. Yes, he said. One of your great-great-great-grandfathers was a dumb boy. Oh, man, whispered Jack. What was his name? Dad, asked Annie. John, their dad says. And Jack and Danny gasped. And what happened to John? Jack asked. Was he hurt in the war? No, he grew up to be the school teacher, their mom says. He had five children. Jack and Annie whooped with joy. That's great news, said Annie. Really great news, said Jack. Thanks for telling us. Sure, their dad smiled through though he looked puzzled again. As Jack hurried to his room, some word from the Civil War song ran through his mind. Give us the song to clear our weary heart, a song of home.